Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan at MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine War news update, the third part thereof for the 15th of September 2025. Military aid video, not a huge amount of news to discuss with you, which might come as a relief to many of you watching. Not another massive hour-long video. Right, I'm going to start with Denmark. Will provide an additional $375 million to Ukraine under the new Ukraine transition program for 2025 through to 2028. So it's over a 3-year period focused on rebuilding infrastructure, aiding veterans and displaced persons, and supporting reforms. Around 60% of the funds will go to Mykolaiv region. If you have been watching my videos over the course of the war, you will know that Denmark is twinned in effect with Mykolaiv region in terms of helping them rebuild, helping them to become resilient. A lot of money coming from Denmark and companies in Mykolaiv to help them with farming, with all sorts of infrastructure. So that's really good news there. And we hear again from Japan. So Ukraine is to receive $246.5 million in financial assistance from Japan, according to the Ministry of Finance. The funds will be allocated to support the efforts of the Ukrainian government to create an investment management system in the context of post-war recovery and reconstruction. So two somewhat aligned pieces of support there from very different countries. Now, Estonia is to pledge over $117 million in military aid to Ukraine in 2026. Since the start of Russia's all-out war in February 2022, Estonia has provided over 500 million euros, $527 million that is, in military aid to Ukraine, amounting to 1.4% of the country's GDP. So this amount of money isn't huge compared to, say, what the EU has given as a whole, or UK or Norway or the US, obviously. It is big for the size of country that Estonia is, and that is a tremendous help. So awesome stuff, Estonia. Now, Romania was importing gunpowder from Russia through Serbia. Now it's building Europe's largest military gunpowder factory instead. So Rheinmetall's 400 million Brazov plant joins drone production, 3,500 a year, Leopard tank assembly, and F-16 maintenance across 4 Romanian cities. So Romania is this very important NATO country, actually, in terms of having a military airbase for NATO to use as a platform. And goodness me, it was so lucky that the presidential election went the correct way there, because they are a super important, geographically local supporter of Ukraine, and they play a key role, I think, in Europe's, as you can see there, support for Ukraine, but also military industrial complex. We're going to go to the Defense Express, which is I think a Ukrainian Ukrainian defense outlet here, talking about Argentina. Thanks to Michael Gowdy, who pointed this out to me. Argentina needs 6 more months to start integrating first F-16s that it got instead of Ukraine. What's going on here? So Argentina will only begin the transition period to integrate F-16 fighter jets purchased second-hand from Denmark into its Air Force in January 2026. That is 1 year and 9 months after signing the acquisition deal. And this refers only to the first 6 of 24 jets, preparations for which are now in their final stage, according to Zona Militar. Before that, the country had received only 1 F-16BM Block 10 for technician training. According to plans, Argentina's operational use of F-16s will start closer to late 2026. The delivery of all 24 aircraft will stretch until 2028, with 6 aircraft arriving annually. This means it will take over 4 years to fully implement the program to strengthen the Argentine Air Force with used fighters. All of this is happening with full support from the program's stakeholders. Argentine pilots and technicians are being trained by the private US company Top Aces, which avoids bottlenecks in government training centers. Denmark, under the contract, is responsible for transporting the jets, as well as providing spare parts and upgrade elements. These peacetime timelines are quite telling, especially compared to Ukraine's fast-track integration and combat deployment of F-16s. The irony is that the very same used F-16s strengthening Argentina were originally meant to reinforce Ukraine's air force. But instead of 24 of Denmark's F-16s out of 44, nearly 30 airworthy, but 24 of Denmark's F-16s out of 44 became hostages to US decisions. Argentina urgently needs to renew its fleet, which consisted of about 20 A4 Skyhawks, in highly questionable flight condition. With Western fighters both too expensive and facing long delivery times, China aggressively pushed its Chengdu JF-17s on favourable credit terms. To block Beijing from gaining a foothold in South America's defence market, Washington insisted on the F-16 deal, but instead of US F-16s, it was Denmark's fleet originally pledged to Ukraine that was redirected. So Argentina was due to get a whole bunch of 24 Danish F-16s. Ukraine was going to get them, but the US, because they have the rights over where these things go, stated to Denmark that they had to go to Argentina because the US didn't want Argentina to start buying equipment from China. And that denuded Ukraine of these F-16s. Finally, in April 2024, a binding agreement was signed for Denmark to sell 24 F-16s to Argentina for about $320 million. Only about $13.3 million per jet. However, the US placed the cost of refurbishment and modernization up to $941 million, offering a credit line to cover it. That is going to upset many people who are hoping to see even more F-16s in Ukraine due to the US getting involved there and redirecting them to Argentina. Now we're going to talk a little bit about European manufacturing, not necessarily connected to Ukraine, although possibly connected to Ukraine because some of this kit might end up going there, etc., etc. So the European conglomerate MBDA, taking into account the lessons learned from the ongoing war in Ukraine, has begun working on developing a guided missile that can be fired from a 120mm tank gun at targets beyond line of sight. This is brilliant. So a tank can not only be a direct weapon, direct fire weapon, where you can see what you're aiming at and you fire a tank shell at that infantry fighting vehicle and blow it up. We know that they can be used for direct fire. Some of the older tanks are being used, kept further back and firing up into the air. In fact, we heard that a Ukrainian tank hit some troops at a distance of 9,100 meters. I showed you that in this morning's video. So that's 9 kilometers plus of indirect fire. Now you can, if you can fire missiles effectively out of a guided missile out of the tube, then tanks can become even more versatile. According to MBDA specialists, the war in Ukraine has shown that tank duels are rare. Tanks mainly fire from covered positions, essentially blindly. The new missile called the Acheron MBT-120 is intended to solve this problem. The exact specifications of the Acheron MBT-120 have not been disclosed. It's assumed that the firing range will be no less than 5 kilometers. Targeting will be carried out via television and infrared channels, meaning the missile can be controlled manually or used in fire and forget mode. The first test is scheduled for 2026. In other words, the tank turret and barrel can be used as as an anti-tank guided missile launcher. Wow, interesting. So BAE Systems Hägglunds, the Swedish subsidiary of UK's BAE Systems, is preparing for the largest order in its history of the CV-90 Combat Vehicle 90 infantry fighting vehicles in the 2026 fiscal year. The agreement is expected to be signed in the second quarter of 2026 with participation from up to 6 European countries, including Finland, Sweden, Norway, Lithuania, Estonia, and the Netherlands. According to the company representative, the order will comprise several hundred vehicles, significantly exceeding the scale of previous contracts. The total number of CV-90s delivered and on order has already surpassed 1,300 units, with an additional 600 currently in production. The company is also working to diversify its supply chains to reduce reliance on a single supplier and therefore not have bottlenecks. Now, I don't know where those CV-90s are going. Evidently, you would assume to Finland, Sweden, Norway, Lithuania, Estonia, and Netherlands, but this could either facilitate older vehicles going to Ukraine or those vehicles themselves going to Ukraine, or not at all. I don't know. What you want is a big marketplace for CV-90s so that spare parts are easy to come by, supply chains are fluidly moving, and that will help Ukraine, which is operating CV-90s, and I think is due to get more going forwards. And I don't know if the more going forward is from that order. But anyway, interesting stuff. Now, talking about munition adaptation, like we just seen with the Acheron, the American loitering munition Switchblade 600 can now be launched from the heavy strike drone MQ-9A Reaper. Relevant tests were successfully conducted at a US Army test range last summer. So the Switchblade 600 is taken in a backpack. The 600 is slightly larger and a bit more robust than the Switchblade 300, which is more like, it's an anti-personnel thing. So you kind of launch it up from this mini mortar that you carry in your backpack. It then goes up, wings come out, and it flies for however long, and the 600 flies for twice as long and twice as far and can take out armor. The 300 can't. It's more like a hand grenade going off by people, so you'd use that to take out personnel. But the 600 has now been adapted so it can be fired from an MQ-9 Reaper. So again, it's using other vehicles to deliver munitions. So the tank to be firing an ATGM that you usually fire from your shoulder, the Reaper to fire a Switchblade 600 that you'd usually carry along in your backpack with you. So the Switchblade 600 will significantly enhance the MQ-9A Reaper's ability to strike targets without entering the engagement zone of air defense systems when launched from an altitude of 9,000 meters. So usually, I forget what the 600 is. Let's say it's got like a 30-kilometer range. I think it's something like that. You then send that up to 9,000 meters, and that range, it's like a guided glide bomb. So the MQ-9 doesn't need to get near, but it also doesn't need to get 30 kilometers near. Because, yeah, it's 30 kilometer range when you're firing it from the ground, and it has to get up, use that fuel to get up to a height, and then travel, and then come down. Actually, most of that range now from being dropped from an MQ-9 Reaper is going to be from the height it's dropped. So at a height of 9,000 meters, the Switchblade 600's operational range increases up to 175 kilometers. That's super useful. Now, Trump's effing around in Greenland just lost the US an $8 billion or euro defense contract. Now, I've already talked to you about this, but I didn't join the two up here. Denmark have said they're no longer going to buy weapons from the US. So it pays to be a good ally. Denmark yesterday announced our biggest defense investment ever. We will buy air defense for 8 billion euros. So they're not going to buy Patriots anymore. They're going to buy the European SAMP-T, the Franco-Italian co-production, because it was cheaper, considerably cheaper. The missiles won't have as much of a bottleneck, and it's much easier to get delivery from within Europe to Denmark than from the US, and also maintenance and supply chains and whatnot within Europe, and that's more advantageous. Not only it helps Europe out, and essentially Denmark will get some of that tax income back through EU funds and whatnot. So there are a lot of reasons why they did this, but actually I forgot to talk about how pissed off Denmark are going to be with the US, given that the US is making these really alarming overtures onto Greenland. So it could well be connected. So anyway, Rasmus Jarlov says, we will buy air defense for 8 billion euros and it will all come from European producers. It has been a strong political desire to buy from reliable and non-threatening partners. Wow. So this is a Conservative MP in Denmark, chairman of Denmark's Defence Committee and former Minister of Business in Denmark. So this is a person involved in the acquisition of this, of these air defence systems. And it's not just about the money and the pragmatic, practical ramifications of buying SAMP-T. No, he said it. We want to buy from reliable and non-threatening partners. The US's foreign policy positions have cost them money in terms of orders to the US defense military industrial complex. Wow. The day after the US loses an $8 billion or euro air defense deal to Italy, Portugal switches its multi-billion-dollar American fighter jet deal to France. Europeans have no interest in having their defense tied to Russian puppet state. Wow. So Portugal picks the French Rafale over America's F-35 for the NATO fleet modernization. And finally, Belgium and the Netherlands have made a decision to transfer 7 tripartite-class Minehunters to Bulgaria, free of charge, to strengthen mine countermeasures capabilities in the Black Sea region. Now, this is pretty clever because this is functionally giving stuff to Ukraine. I think this is me sort of trying to join the dots here without giving it to Ukraine. So you can't give ships, naval ships, to Ukraine because Ukraine can't bring them into the Black Sea, because they are a nation at war, and the Montreux Convention states that Turkey has the right to shut down the Bosphorus Straits, the entrance into the Black Sea, to any warring nations that are fighting in the Black Sea. So you can have no Russian or Ukrainian naval military vessels going through the Bosphorus Straits, but you can have Bulgarian naval vessels going through because they are not at war. So if you give 3 Minehunters, as Belgium and Netherlands are looking to do, free of charge to strengthen mine countermeasure capabilities in the Black Sea, then the Bulgarians can go about clearing mines in the Black Sea, and that will help trade and keep the Black Sea safe. So under the agreement, Belgium will transfer 4 ships and the Netherlands 3. So that's 7 ships, along with tactical simulator and spare parts for repair and maintenance. Bulgaria, in turn, commits to covering the costs of restoring their combat readiness and subsequent maintenance, with priority given to Belgian companies. Interesting. So there's always these strings. No such thing as a free lunch. We're going to give you these. You can run them. We don't have the cost of running them. And by the way, when you want to maintain them, you need to give priority to our companies. This step is also primarily aimed at and indirectly assisting Ukraine, as Bulgaria will need to provide training for Ukrainian crews to operate these ships and begin mine clearance potentially even before the end of the Russia-Ukraine war. Belgium and the Netherlands have already transferred 2 similar Minehunters to Ukraine, which we know of, and another one is expected to be sent by the end of this year. But of course, the Ukrainians cannot bring those into the Black Sea, but they can bring these ones in. That's super cool. That's super clever. Bulgaria being a really important, like Romania, important neighbouring allied to Ukraine. Now, moving on to Ukrainian stuff in general, there are more than, this is Zelensky speaking, more than 100 tank battalions operating in our combat brigades, and these are all experienced units, a significant tank force in Europe, Zelensky said. President of Ukraine announced this during the presentation of State Awards to tank soldiers. I think it's National Tank Day or something like that. There's lots of discussion about the role tanks are playing in modern warfare, but, you know, if you look at the adaptation of that tank earlier to firing ATGMs, then these things can be far more useful. That versatility would be, I think, super important. Denmark has granted Ukraine's Firepoint permission to build a solid rocket fuel plant near Skridstrup airbase, bypassing over 20 regulatory hurdles. This marks Ukraine's first defence production facility on NATO soil. The launch is set for December. Couple of things here. So Denmark is going to help Ukraine to build their cruise and possibly ballistic missiles, because they're going to get rocket fuel plants for Ukraine built in Denmark. That's super important. It's safe. And I think we can understand now that Ukraine's military industrial complex has come under a lot of pressure from Russian missiles and drones. So they need to do this, but also it's the desire to get things done quickly. And you are seeing regulatory hurdles being bypassed here, which might be controversial for some, but for Ukraine to be able to do things as quickly as possible and get the support they need and get the resources they need either built or supplied, then that's going to be very helpful for Ukraine. And serial production of Sapsan and Flamingo is expected in early 2026, according to the former Deputy Chief of the General Staff, Romanenko. Now, 2 reasons why this might be. And remember, we heard that Ukraine was building 1 Flamingo a day, and they were hoping to get up to 7 by October, which means they should be building 7 of these a day pretty much now, and then sending them into Russia or occupied territories. However, they appear to be putting back serial production to 2026. This is bad news for Ukraine in terms of hearing so much about the Flamingo and everyone going, yeah, release of Flamingos, blah, blah, blah. 2 options. 1, Ukraine's military industrial complex has been hit. And there were theories that when they released the video footage from inside the plant, that actually it may have jeopardized the plant's safety, and the plant may have been hit. Somebody may have recognized where that was. But either way, one of the theories is the military industrial complex in Ukraine has been hit, and actually missile production has now been put back because of that. And that could be also why they're building things like those factories in Denmark. Okay, because remember, this is the same company. Firepoint in Denmark, Firepoint makes a Flamingo. Second option is that they have tested these, as they did recently in Crimea, fired them under conditions that were favourable. One sort of hit the compound and one missed, but was able to damage things through shrapnel, and one completely missed. It may be that the Ukrainians are going back to the drawing board to make sure that these missiles are better, that the circle error probable is better, and they have a more accurate missile at the end of the day. And that might be a 3-month delay or 5 months delay, depending what early 2026 means. But this is not good news for Ukraine in terms of everyone being excited about them getting these missiles up and running now. And then we're going to finish on just a single Russian piece here. So Russia receives UAE, so the United Arab Emirates, made armoured vehicles. Dang. Russia's National Guard, Rosgvardia, has been observed operating new armoured vehicles manufactured by the UAE-based Straight Group, confirming deliveries of foreign-built platforms to Moscow despite ongoing sanctions and export restrictions. What the frick is going on here? Sort that out. During recent training exercises, Rosgvardia units fielded multiple Spartan SUT armoured vehicles, some of which were fitted with additional protection systems designed for counter-drone attacks. Footage also revealed a variant of the Spartan SUT equipped with a mortar system, the 82mm 2B24 Dua, mounted on in the rear compartment. The appearance of these vehicles underscores a growing reliance on external suppliers to sustain Russia's armoured fleet during the war in Ukraine. Of course, this is the sort of stuff that Russia should be well capable of building themselves. But during the war, they're having to order these in from the UAE. In October 2024, Defence Blog reported more than 20 vehicles built on modified Toyota Land Cruiser and Ford F550 platforms had been delivered to Russia. The shipment included Spartan SUT, Cobra and Cougar models from Straight Group, a company headquartered in the UAE. The latest sightings confirm that the flow of Straight vehicles to Russia has continued and that the platforms are being adapted to meet battlefield demands, including counter, drone protection and indirect fire support roles. Straight Group has a documented history of its armoured vehicles appearing in Russian-linked operations. The company previously collaborated with Russia's military-industrial company VPK to design the Condor and VPK Ural armoured vehicles, which were used by Wagner Group operatives in multiple conflict zones. The deployment of Spartan SUT vehicles with the Rosgvardia adds another layer of the pattern of Russia sourcing specialised platforms abroad, while its domestic defence industry struggles to replace losses in Ukraine. While Moscow sought to portray its defence sector as self-reliant, the continued appearance of Straight Group's vehicles highlights the role of foreign manufacturers in sustaining Russian paramilitary and security forces. For now, the evidence is clear. Rosgvardia is deploying Straight Group vehicles in field training and potentially preparing them for combat use, marking a fresh expansion of Russia's foreign-sourced arsenal. So I hope something gets done about that. Anyway, that's enough from me. I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And please remember, Car for Ukraine, our autumn harvest campaign is up and running. So please go to atpgeo.com/donate and you will end up on this landing page. You can support Car for Ukraine, get 2 vehicles to 2 different units. You can get badges and pins to help to complete your life, and a name on the sticker that is attached to the car. So thank you today to Joe PK there, Slava Ukraini, Violet Postcards for Peace, and Stefan Kolinsky, as well as Steve Little and Nicholas Cummins. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Stephen Jones maybe as well. So thank you, Stephen, and all those aforementioned people for your very generous support for this campaign. Really, really cool. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.